The mansion on the outskirts of Boston stood in silence, as if frozen in time. Its tall white columns gleamed under the pale morning sun. The garden was neatly trimmed, and the glass windows reflected a sky so blue it almost looked painted. Everything was perfect. Too perfect. Inside those pristine walls, however, there was no life. Only the echo of what used to be. The house had the beauty of a museum and the soul of a tomb. On the second floor, sunlight fell across a room that once rang with laughter. The nursery. A small boy, Aiden, lay motionless on his bed. He was 7 now, but his frame was thin, his skin pale like porcelain. He breathed softly, as if even air had become too heavy to carry. Doctors had come and gone, each left with the same puzzled look and the same hopeless words. His body is fine. There's no medical reason for this. And yet, Aiden was fading. Day by day, his voice grew weaker, his eyes dimmer, as though something unseen was draining him of warmth. Downstairs, Linda, his mother, stood by the window holding a cold cup of coffee that she never drank. Her reflection stared back at her from the glass. A woman exhausted, eyes swollen from sleepless nights. Hope had not yet left her eyes, but it trembled there, fragile and worn thin. Her husband, David, buried himself in work. He left early, returned late, as if the house itself frightened him. Sometimes Linda wondered if he stayed away because he could no longer bear to see their son fading in that room. Only one person didn't fear the silence that hung over the mansion: Mary, Aiden's nanny. She had come into their lives 3 years ago when Aiden was 5, a bright young boy with a curious mind and a smile that could melt the coldest hearts. Mary wasn't like other nannies. She treated the boy not as a job, but as if he were her own child. She played with him, read him stories, and sat by his bedside when nightmares visited. And Aiden loved her dearly. In her presence, his eyes lit up, even if only a little. But recently, even Mary felt something strange inside the house. The air was heavy, thick, as though it carried whispers too faint to understand. Some nights, the temperature in Aiden's room dropped without reason. The lights flickered. The child would tremble in his sleep and call out softly, "Mama." It was on one of those nights that Mary noticed it, a faint draft creeping across the nursery floor, though every window was closed. She followed it to the foot of the bed. The moonlight poured through the curtains, silver and cold. Shadows danced gently on the floorboards. Then she saw it. Something had moved under the bed. Her heart thudded. Slowly, she knelt down, lifted the sheet, and shone her small flashlight beneath. There, half buried under dust, was a small bundle wrapped in an old cloth. She reached for it carefully. It was heavier than she expected. When she unfolded the fabric, a wooden box appeared, aged, its hinges rusted, its surface carved with initials she didn't recognize. She opened it. Inside was a porcelain doll with a cracked face, an old silver locket, and a faded photograph. The photograph showed a young woman holding a baby in her arms, smiling tenderly at the camera. On the back, written in delicate handwriting, were the words, "For my little boy, Mommy is always near." Mary's breath caught in her throat. She had seen this woman before, in a small portrait hidden in David's office, tucked away behind family certificates. It was Aiden's biological mother. Linda wasn't Aiden's birth mother. She had adopted him when he was just a baby, after his real mother died under tragic circumstances. The subject had always been forbidden in the house. David had never allowed the past to be mentioned. That night, Mary placed the locket gently on Aiden's bedside table and whispered, "Your mother loves you, sweetheart. She's always near." For the first time in months, Aiden slept peacefully. The next morning, he woke up smiling faintly. "Mary," he whispered, "she came to me. She touched my hair and said everything's okay." Mary froze. "Who, sweetheart?" "My real mom," he said softly. "She was wearing white. She said I don't have to be afraid anymore." Tears welled up in Mary's eyes. She didn't know if it had been a dream or something more. But when she looked around, she noticed something impossible. The sunlight in the nursery was warmer. The air no longer felt heavy. The house had changed. When Linda learned about the wooden box, she wept. not from fear, but from the release of years of silence. That evening, she sat beside Aiden and cried openly, holding his tiny hands. For the first time, she didn't pretend to be strong. David stood in the doorway, his face pale. He had spent years bearing the past, the tragedy of Aiden's biological mother, the guilt of never telling his son the truth. But seeing Aiden smile again cracked something deep inside him. He walked over, knelt beside his wife and son, and for the first time whispered, "I'm sorry, Aiden. I thought forgetting would protect you, but forgetting only kills what we love." Aiden looked at him, his frail voice barely audible. "It's okay, Dad. She said love never dies." From that day, something shifted in the mansion. The family began to heal. The photographs that had been locked away in drawers returned to the walls. Laughter, quiet at first, then louder, filled the halls. The doctors, puzzled as ever, couldn't explain it. But Aiden began to recover. His strength returned, his color warmed, and the coldness that had haunted him vanished completely. In the garden, where once only silence lived, children's laughter now echoed between the trees. Mary often watched from the window as Aiden ran beneath the sunlight, his locket glinting gold in the breeze. He laughed, he played, he lived. Sometimes when the wind rustled through the curtains, she felt a soft touch on her shoulder, like a hand made of air, grateful and kind. She would smile and whisper, "He's safe now." And somewhere in the house, a faint scent of lavender would linger, the perfume of the woman in the photograph. But the story didn't end there. Months later, on a rainy afternoon, Mary walked past the nursery and saw Aiden drawing. "What are you making?" she asked gently. He turned the paper around. It was a picture of 3 people holding hands, a man, a woman in white, and a little boy between them. "That's you and my mom," Aiden said cheerfully. "She says you're her friend. She told me to tell you thank you." Mary froze. "When did she tell you that?" Aiden just smiled. "Last night. She comes when it rains. She says rain helps flowers grow." That evening, Mary went to her room and took out the wooden box again. The doll's face, once cracked and faded, seemed somehow different, as if its expression had softened. She placed it back under the bed, this time with care, whispering, "Rest now. He's safe." As she stood up, she noticed something strange. The photograph was gone. In its place was a single lavender petal. Years passed. The mansion was no longer a cold shell. It was a home filled with laughter, music, and life. Aiden grew stronger, happier. He often spoke at school about memories he shouldn't have remembered, moments with a mother he never met. His teachers called it imagination. Linda called it a miracle. David found peace too, at last. He often stood by the window watching his son play, whispering a quiet prayer of gratitude for the second chance they'd been given. And Mary? She stayed on as part of the family. To everyone, she was the nanny. To Aiden, she was the bridge between worlds. One quiet evening many years later, Mary sat on the porch watching the sunset. The house glowed golden in the light. Aiden, now a teenager, waved to her from the garden. "Mary," he called. "Guess what? I got accepted to art school." She clapped her hands together, tears of joy shining in her eyes. "Your mother would be so proud." He smiled knowingly. "I know. She told me." That night, when everyone was asleep, Mary walked through the house one last time. The air was calm, warm, no longer heavy with silence. In the nursery, the moonlight shone over the empty bed where Aiden once lay so frail. Mary whispered, "You did it, little one." And for a brief moment, she felt that same soft breeze pass through her hair, the invisible touch of gratitude. The mansion on the outskirts of Boston still stands, but it is no longer silent. It sings with the laughter of a boy who once hovered between life and shadow. Sometimes when the wind rustles through the garden, those who pass by say they hear 2 women's voices, one young, one older, laughing softly together. They say love never dies. And perhaps, sometimes it doesn't have to, because even in the darkest corners of silence, the memory of love can bring life back to where it was once lost. Dear friends, if this story touched your heart, tell us where you're watching from. And remember, sometimes healing doesn't come from medicine. It comes from remembering the love we tried to forget.